on From Data to Decisions, How AI is Reshaping Impact Assessment. Today's webinar is being hosted in collaboration with IAIA, the International Association for Impact Assessment, and WSP, who you'll hear more about in just a moment. My name is Keisha Blaser. I'm with the IAIA, and I am the training program specialist, so I manage all things online and in-person training for IAIA. If you hear anything in today's webinar that you would like to share with your networks, please feel free to do so and tag IAIA. There's our handle and a hashtag you can use as well if you were to share on LinkedIn. Now, before we get started, I would like to point you to www.iaia.org, where you can find a variety of resources and information that might be beneficial for you in your career. So first off, like today's webinar, we have a variety of webinars available in our resource library for you to look at. So a couple that might be of interest, we just had one on modernizing EIA through AI in Hong Kong, which explored how AI, big data, and smart technologies are enhancing the efficiency, consistency, and transparency of environmental assessments. There's also a webinar, we have a series of webinars on digital impact assessment, and one of the ones in our series is Perspectives on the Use of AI in IA, which explored the growing role of AI in impact assessment process. Next, in addition to webinars, we also have a variety of live online training courses. These courses are typically on Zoom or Teams, something similar, and are direct instructor-led lecture style courses. We have a variety of courses open in June and July, including a course on resettlement planning, livelihood restoration, and SIA, a course that's led entirely in French on conflict management and impact assessment, a course on leadership, and then another course on fundamentals of public participation. So more information, including registration, the fees, and schedule for those courses can be found at our website. In addition, we also have 2 courses in our professional development program, which are longer form 12-week courses. These are kind of an independent study, but all participants are also paired with a one-to-one expert mentor. We have a course on the foundations of environmental impact assessment, as well as a course on the foundations of social impact assessment. The next courses run from June to August, and registration is open for both courses, and spots are available, but are filling fast. So if you are interested, please check out the website or let me know if you need more information. Lastly, we also have on-demand training on strategic environmental assessment. These are short 30 to 60-minute courses on different sectors in the SEA realm, like hydropower, solar, tidal, and more. And then there are also free downloadable publications like our best practice principles, IFAST tips, and more. Now, before we get started, a few pieces of housekeeping. If there are any important information that you'll need to hear from the panelists or from me during the webinar, you'll see those messages appear in the chat. But most importantly is the questions tab. So we will wrap with about 15 minutes of Q&A with our presenters. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the questions tab. Don't feel like you have to wait till the Q&A to put your question in. Do it at any time. And then if you have any issue with the audio or need to check out the settings, there is a settings tab available for you as well. And then finally, this webinar will be recorded and sent to you, and again, will be available on the resource library within a day or two of the live broadcast. Now, as we get started, I'd like to hand it over to Andre Martin Bouchard, who is the WSP's Global Director of Earth and Environment. He has over 30 years of experience in environmental consulting and leads WSP's Global Earth and Environment business. So with that, Andre, over to you.
Thank you very much, Keisha. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for what I think will be a great panel discussion on AI and how it's reshaping impact assessment. So as Keisha said, I'm Andre Martin Bouchard. I'm the Global Director for the Earth and Environment Global Sector at WSP. And it's actually great to have seen so much interest on the topic. So a very warm welcome, everyone, for joining us today. Obviously, AI is a big topic. We hear it from all over the place. At WSP, we have a pretty clear strategy, and we are embracing the AI opportunity. We think this is going to help us augment, improve, and grow our services and just be better at what we do. So we're definitely embracing the AI transformation journey that the world is on. And today I'm super excited to actually have the opportunity to engage with such a great slate of experts from different perspectives. Um, Today we'll hear from the line of Catherine Gentile. Catherine is a senior project director, impact assessment specialist at WSP. Good morning, Catherine. We also have Jill Baker. Jill is joining us. She's a regulatory lead at Energy Alberta, and super happy to have that perspective on the panel today. We have Luca Marini. Luca is a senior environment and sustainability specialist at the World Bank, the MEGA division of the World Bank. Thanks for joining us, Luca, today. We also have Sean Allen. Sean is Vice President of Global Digital Strategy at WSP. And finally, we have Matthew Rodden. Matthew is a cloud and AI specialist at Microsoft. So a very well, rounded, diverse slate of experts, including some from WSP, but also from the regulatory side of things, from the technology side of things, and from financial institution side of things. So great to have you here with me today to discuss AI. So the way I was intending to run the panel discussion today is to start off first with just one general overarching questions for all of you. That first question, if you could keep your answer as short as possible, maybe within 1 minute, and then I will be going around the table for more specific questions, so you can go deeper into the topic when it's your turn. So let's get going. Let me start off with that first roundtable question I have for all of you. To start off, where are you seeing the most practical value from AI in impact assessment today, and why does that matter now? If I may ask Catherine to get going first.
Sure, happy to kick us off. Thanks, Andre Martin. I think for me, I see the most tangible value of AI today in review and synthesis tasks for sure. AI is becoming a type of research assistant that can scan baseline studies, regulatory text, and volumes of stakeholder input at a depth and breadth no individual specialist can really match. AI is giving us practitioners the skill of augmenting our expert judgment, but it doesn't replace it. We are still framing the questions, we are setting the standard of evidence, and we are signing off on the findings. As ESIAs are continuing to grow in scope and complexity in a legislative environment, particularly here in Canada, where I'm calling from, there is a desire to deliver major nation building infrastructure projects at a speed I've never seen before. And so if we don't augment how we work, teams are going to be pressed on time and scope and will be at risk of maybe narrowing the lens that we're looking at. AI really lets us widen that lens while keeping a lot of rigor.
Thank you, Catherine. Jill, where are you seeing the
Great.
most value from AI now?
Thanks for the question. I wanted to say I completely agree with Catherine. That was one of the first things I thought of, was in terms of the response she provided. One of the ways that we're finding a practical value of AI in the work that I'm doing right now is enhancing the accessibility of information that comes forward in impact assessments. So, for example, assisting with drafting of non-technical summaries of various technical reports. So, for example, it's really becoming important in terms of helping us and our consultants, such as those at WSP, on information translation for communication purposes. So for example, right now we've got a number of technical reports which are understandable when we're talking to other technical experts, such as those across the regulatory table. But when we want to have discussions with communities, we're finding that using AI to take fairly technical, detailed, complex reports and having AI do a first draft of simple language summaries is becoming very time efficient. Of course, we still need the experts to come in and do that review of the drafts, but we're finding it very helpful and time efficient to use AI in that drafting first step.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah, I think the ability to summarize piles of information is definitely something that we are seeing across the different regions where we operate. Luca, can I ask you your views, please?
Yes, no. I mean, what have been said just is part of my view, especially from a lender perspective. As you can imagine, we have been asked to cover or to finance more and more transaction in tight timelines. So what we see at the most immediate value from AI is the efficiency that can help us, and especially also consistency, but also early risk identification. So if with AI we can scan rapidly a large amount of large volume of environmental and social documentation, impact assessment, baseline, and have an initial flag of potential gaps against our standard, and kind of stress the trends that are coming out in the documents, that help us not really replacing the expert judgment, but help us augment it, help us focus on the higher risk issues, focus our time on how to manage, how to solve the key gaps. And that's where like most where the professional judgment is mostly needed. So it's really on the efficiency and the early risk identification, and then when the specialist comes in and can better sense how to manage this information on the process scale.
Thank you very much, Luca. Sean, if you don't mind, I'd like to hear your views on what's the most practical value from AI.
Well, really, a number of really great examples have just been given, and you could almost summarize all of those as the virtual agentic workforce. You take the number of agents that you have available to do the work, and you can multiply it by 10, 20, pick your number. But one of the things, Andre Martin, that I think is most powerful is that we now have this connected digital environment, and AI is the language that allows that environment to seamlessly all work together. And it has broken down, it's starting to break down a lot of silos. Instead of the siloed ecology department, the siloed climate change department, the siloed hydrology department, et cetera, all of a sudden, everybody is coordinating and working together, and silos are starting to come down. And ultimately, what that does is it speeds everything up. And so, to me, this is one of the most powerful positives that is coming out of AI, is this concept of a common language that starts to break down silos and speed everything up and provide value.
Thank you, Sean. Matthew?
Yeah, thank you, Andre Martin. And really, what you're going to see here is a lot of parallels with my fellow panelists here. So, from my perspective, the most practical value of AI, especially in impact assessment today, will always be in early stage, high volume work that seems to slow teams down, but doesn't necessarily require that deep judgment on every single task. So if you kind of want to go one level deeper, you can really think of that as things like screening large document sets, summarizing baseline information, looking at patterns across multiple technical studies. And so the application possibilities are quite broad. And why that matters now is that impact assessment, I'm sure as everyone on the call can attest to, is getting more complex, not less, right? So projects are dealing with more data, more stakeholder expectation, more regulatory scrutiny, and of course, always tighter timelines. So our view is that AI can help teams work faster, more consistently, but the real value is not replacing professional judgment. It's really freeing up the practitioners to spend more time on things like interpretation and decision quality. So the practical value of AI is not really AI as the decision maker, at least certainly not at this stage, but it's really as a force multiplier. So I echo all the comments from my fellow panelists here.
Thank you very much, Matthew. That's very thoughtful. And just as a reminder to our audience today, Matthew is from Microsoft, and we're very excited and happy to be working, WSP to be working in collaboration with Microsoft on many of these AI-enabled tools to actually do just that augmentation that we've been talking about the last 10 minutes. So thanks for that, Matthew. All right, so I'm going to turn now to some more in-depth questions for each and every one of you, starting with Catherine. Catherine, I'd like to hear from you, from your ESIA practitioner's perspective. Where is AI generally helping today, and where do you still need human judgment, technical expertise, and professional accountability in the work that you do as an ESIA practitioner?
Yeah, great question. And I think Matthew touched on a few of the themes that I'm going to maybe reiterate. But first, let's tackle that question about where AI is genuinely helping. It's in the volume of information, right? Research and review work is where AI augmentation really pays off the most. AI is letting us cross-check more sources, more data sets, and more precedents than before, and do it really consistently and in a replicable workflow. And as many on the line know, replication is a key ESIA principle. So that's a really great positive. I personally worked on a new highway project that has spanned almost my entire career. And that's almost 18 years worth of data, fieldwork, reporting, meeting minutes, engagement records, plans, drawings, the full shebang, many legislative changes. And I really wish that AI had been more advanced back then, because it was often like the memories of longstanding team members like myself that was called upon when issues evolved and there was a need to find information quickly. And now we can have these large project databases be queried and much better leveraged. And that's a really powerful tool. I think AI can really help with patterns and gaps, like Matthew had noted before, and inconsistencies can surface earlier in the process when there's still time to act on them, so nothing's really getting missed. And it frees us specialists up from low value information extraction and reformatting sort of exercises. And so our time is going towards more interpretation and judgment. And that's where we can bring experience and value to our clients and to our regulators. And I think that is what really brings me the most excitement about AI. It really gives us more time to focus on something at WSP we call visioneering. So being innovative and focusing on the project-specific issues and concerns rather than the typically time-intensive sort of administration tasks. And for the second part of your question, Andre Martin, where does human judgment remain non-negotiable? To me, there's sort of three places where we really need to stand firm, and that's framing the assessment, weighing the evidence, and our own professional accountability. In framing assessments, it's practitioner expertise that's really required there, right? We need to continue to decide what matters, what the receptors are, what significance means, and how much impact is generated in this context. And that's professional judgment and not AI patterns, right? Recommendations are great, but decision-making continues to rest with us as practitioners. And in being able to weigh evidence, ESIA almost always involves incomplete or evolving data and sometimes limited contextual information. So when AI can really quickly summarize and make recommendations, only an expert can really decide how much weight that truly deserves in a unique project context. And finally, there's that professional accountability piece. It's us practitioners signing the report. That's my name, that's your name on that work. And that accountability cannot be delegated to a model or program. It's our duty of care. It doesn't change just because we have this shiny new tool in the toolbox. We really need to still use our professional judgment and make sure that what we're presenting, we're really proud of.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Great insights, and you referred to the importance of the relationship of the work that we do, you do as a practitioner, together with the regulators, and how important it is to meet the requirements. So let me turn to Jill Baker from Energy Alberta. Jill, you are a regulator. What would make an AI-enabled impact assessment process not just faster, but actually more defensible, more transparent, and decision-ready for complex projects? Jill?
Thanks for the question. And just to be clear, I'm not the regulator. I'm with the proponents. So Energy Alberta is a private company proposing nuclear
Oh,
right now
sorry
in
about that.
Alberta. No, that's okay. I just don't want the audience to be confused. So I'll take those in order. So defensible, I think with any modeling that you use, AI is similar in that any garbage in is garbage out. So in order to be defensible, we need to ensure that the data inputs that we're using in assessments need to be defensible. So we have to ensure good quality of input data to any AI-enabled system. So any AI input to data needs to have, even though it's going to be reviewed through an AI system, agreeing with Catherine, we need to have the human oversight to ensure the accuracy and the verification of the data that goes into any AI-enabled system. And I want to emphasize that even though we're talking about AI systems here and data management and verification, I want to emphasize that we're still going to need human-created data sets. So I don't want people walking away thinking that we can just scrape the web for whatever data we'll need for projects. We're still going to need experts in the field collecting data that is, especially for the project I'm working on, it's a greenfield site. We have very limited data sets. And while we can scrape the internet for augmenting that data, we're still going to need human-created quality data coming from our experts. And that I don't think AI will ever replace when we're in a greenfield situation. On the issue of transparency, I want to share with you guys an aspect that we're working with currently with WSP on the project they're working with that could improve the openness and transparency. So to begin with, we need to be absolutely open and transparent about how we're going to use AI and to what extent we're going to use AI in the system. Because if we don't provide that clear description of how AI-enabled approaches are going to be used, people aren't going to trust it. If they don't understand it, they won't trust it. And then that'll get into issues when particularly we're dealing with the public. And so AI is moving so quickly and people haven't, I don't believe, really kept up with it. If we're going to start using these systems, we need to be clear about the extent to we're using, how we're using it in simple language that people understands. And so on the transparency aspect, and again, related to trust, one thing we're considering at Energy Alberta is sharing the AI application platform that we're considering using, not just within our company to do the data sorting and all that and the assessment, but actually considering sharing that AI platform with others who are going to be involved in the decision making. So basically making the platform open to those that are going to be most impacted by the project, but also the decision makers. Now we haven't this is pretty new and we haven't got the buy-in from the regulators yet. But the thinking is that we've got a panel that's going to be sorting through thousands and thousands of pages of information. And so what we're considering right now is creating a digital library that's AI enabled. And if we all agree on the data sets and the baseline reports as an example that go into that digital data set, and then create an AI chatbot, if you will, that can search it. If we all agree on the database and the reports and the information that is the basis of that system, then those that are making decisions and those that are going to be potentially affected by the project can be given access to the system, and then they can query it themselves. And where this becomes interesting, and perhaps it goes to the idea about cutting down silos, is as an expert scientist from Environment Canada and climate change, for example, they've got a very particular point of view and they've got a certain line of questioning that they want to understand when we give them all these reports, and they can go in and query that. But the nations that are living on the ground may have a similar type of interest on, for example, wildlife or water, but they can put in their own query into the system that's along the same lines, but it's in a language and it will hopefully give them the response that makes sense to them. And so we're hoping that an approach like that might be more transparent. People think of AI as perhaps cutting down on transparency, but we see it as an opportunity, perhaps as opening up more transparency. And then just to wrap up on how AI-enabled decision approaches may help with decision readiness, I think what we absolutely need is to have a regulatory framework that's adaptable and open to using AI. And right now, I think, again, it's such a new technology and it's moving so fast. I personally am not seeing the adaptability in the regulatory system. And if you've been in the regulatory system, you know that it's a slow process. So we're going to need a framework at the government level that can keep up, and not just keep up, but actually provide a framework that will provide proponents and practitioners with certainty on what is the approach that's acceptable to government. Because you could go down this really innovative rabbit hole that sounds really exciting, but if the government's not going to accept it, then you're wasting a lot of your time. And then finally, I think, again, just to wrap up, in order to really embrace AI-enabled approaches, I think we need an openness to change. And that's across the board. Openness from the public, from the stakeholders, from the people that will be affected, and an openness from government that's going to ideally benefit from using it. And people don't like change. Like impact assessment in Canada's 30+ year history. And so this is a rapid change. And I think people are going to be uncomfortable at first until they learn more about it.
Thank you very much, Jill. And I want to go back on one of the points you mentioned on transparency and the ability for these AI-enabled tools to actually provide the opportunity for stakeholders to, ask for certain questions or queries and get the information really rapidly. Keep in mind that over those 30 years that you've just talked about, we've been good at producing thousands and thousands of pages of science and documents on all sorts of topics, and it's hard for stakeholders to actually find their, what really matters to them information. So I really believe that this is going to help with stakeholder engagement as well. Thank you, Jill. I'm going to turn to Luca Marini from the World Bank. Question for you, Luca, from a lender and financial institution perspective. What do you need to see from an AI-enabled impact assessment workflows before it can meaningfully support due diligence or risk assessment or even investment decision?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew Martin. So here in the World Bank Group, either World Bank, MIGA, or IFC, anything that we are looking at, it's going to be part of our decision making. So, and to complement to what Catherine and Jill already said, we present our studies and our project, our assessment, that whenever an operation is approved, there is shareholders. So there is an accountability part from our side. And to have an assessment, an AI assessment done, a key aspects that we really need to have clear, that's critical, it's traceability. We need to be able to show and understand how the model works, how those conclusions were made, and because we need to explain it to shareholders, to stakeholders, to affected communities, outside, inside, to CSOs and GOs. We have to show how we reach those conclusions. That's why still accountability, as we've been saying, sits still with the specialist, because it's the specialist that will interpret the results that will come from the model. But still, the traceability, how the tool reaches the conclusion, where are the data set coming from, and what assumption have been made to reach those conclusions. It's going to be very, very important, and that helps in the building the trust that also Jill was mentioning right now. If you don't know how the models work, how can you trust it? And second, we'll have probably to be already pre-aligned to the established standards in the sector. Like we work with the performance standards, MIGA performance standards. Other banks have their own set of standards. They all like kind of a global set of standards. And there is a level of impact assessment down at a local level. And I think we can leverage these tools to kind of bridge the gap sometimes between the international level and the national level, and support our due diligence and make the impact assessment more, let's say, interpretable for our language, for our due diligence. And another aspect that I think is key and will give comfort to us as practitioners, but also to stakeholders, is the reliability. We need our outputs that we show, the outputs that come from the models. They have to be consistent across regions, across contexts, across sectors, across that's to be consistent in simple projects, in high risk environmental and social projects, where the variety of data, data quality, data inputs can vary, can be significantly different. So we need consistent in that, all consistent in explaining the assumption of what are behind the results given by the model. So AI can, I think, can bridge that, can support all this. Again, as I mentioned before, accountability still sits with the lender, sits with the specialist, with myself. But because we need, but I think AI can support having a robust enough product at the end that can stand internal review, disclosure, external scrutiny. But again, we still need to be able to defend it, and through traceability and consistency.
Thank you very much, Luca. Question for Sean Allen. Sean, as we move from all these static reports that we've been writing for years, these big bricks, environmental impact assessments, as we move from that to more connected digital environments, how does that change the way impact assessment teams monitor conditions, integrate data, and communicate progress over time? So how do we make these impact assessment more real time than static, in other words?
Yeah, it's a great question, Andre Martin. I go back to when I first started my career. I worked at MIT Lincoln Laboratory, and it was actually in an air traffic control context. And one thing that was very fundamental was this concept of what I call a common operating picture. And that is the single unified picture that everybody works to minimize the risk of an accident occurring and to optimize fundamentally the flow in that context of air traffic control. So you have a project, and you don't want that project to harm the environment. You want to minimize its impact on the environment, et cetera, and you want to make sure that the project itself proceeds very, very quickly. And really what AI does and what digital does is it provides, you might say, that unified common operating picture. And if you take that a little bit further, maybe you've got 25 assets or 50 assets, and you're trying to understand the impact those are going to have on the environment. And you said there's lots and lots of data being collected. There's sensors that have been installed. You're looking at satellite data, et cetera. And you're trying to understand across all of that information what is going on, what mitigative measures need to be taken, et cetera. And really what this digital connected environment does is it allows you to quickly get the big picture view, identify the problem areas, compare that to what you said was going to happen on that project in terms of its impact to the environment, et cetera, and course correct. And to me, that is the big thing, is that now you take monitoring from something that is a snapshot in time to something that is live, continuously updating, and ultimately leads to course correction quickly, so that you're in a much more proactive mode instead of reactive. And that's good for everybody. If you identify the problem quickly, you can course correct, and you can ultimately get the questions answered that need to be answered and move forward. And to me, that is really what changes. I want to leave you with this one concept, that you really move from something that is fairly disjointed and static to something that is live. And the beauty of something that's live is it puts everybody on the same page, helps them all operate from a single source of truth, a single unified picture, and ultimately that speeds everything up and leads to better outcomes for everybody.
Thank you very much, Sean. And yes, we're talking about AI in the context of environmental impact assessments here, but also what you just described, Sean, reminds me of the Smart Whales / Smart Harbor product that we've developed at WSP to actually monitor the movement of whale population in the North Atlantic, so that commercial ships can actually navigate without collision. So and that's a real-time dashboard that those captains can actually connect on and have best information available at the time of navigating to actually avoid these collisions and hopefully protect these populations. So that's great. Um, can I go with a follow-up question for you, Sean, if you don't mind? I'm just curious.
Please.
I think if you can just quickly touch on a product like Nature Vista and the work that we are doing at WSP in order to get to that space of real-time augmented capacity for impact assessments, compliance, and disclosure.
Yeah, for sure, Andre Martin. That's a great question. And just quickly, Nature Vista, it has 3 modules. One is around regulatory disclosure. Second one is around impact assessment, and the third, of course, is the actual monitoring. And this goes back, Andre Martin, to what I said about a common operating picture. Those 3 things, monitoring, impact assessment, and regulatory disclosure, they're not 3 independent things. They're 3 connected things. And so Nature Vista unifies those 3 things all together. And so that's number 1. Number 2 is that what we've done is we've created a single unified, we use the term a nature data lake, where we put all of the information that would be relevant to a project into one place, the nature data lake. And it's that unified source of truth that everybody works to. And the data in that data lake is absolutely vast: biodiversity data, climate data, IBAT data, data from past projects. It's all there together. The second thing is we build on top of that what we call what I would say repeatable processes. We have lots of people at WSP, subject matter experts, who are working on these topics every single day, and they are feeding into this system the best of what they do from a practitioner point of view, and building that into, you might say, the virtual agents that operate across that lake house. And that ultimately will speed up the whole process around impact assessment. Catherine described some of the things that are done, and many on this call have already. Amalgamating data, writing sections of a report, and there's processes that go around all that. And identifying gaps, et cetera. So that's all built in from a workflow point of view. And that provides ultimately, Andre Martin, the single unified context. So that's just a little bit of a preview. I want to leave you with this, that our principle around Nature Vista and anything we do with clients is we want a client to co-create with us, because ultimately they are the stakeholder that ultimately will be affected by the outcomes, and we want their views to shape what Nature Vista ultimately looks like. So that's just a quick snapshot of Nature Vista, which we'll go into more later.
Thank you very much, Sean. Very insightful again. And I want to turn to Matthew from Microsoft. I'd like to get your views, Matthew, from a technology perspective or from a technology provider perspective. Where is AI mature enough today to support impact assessment workflows in a meaningful way, and where should organizations still be cautious?
Yeah, I love this question, Andre Martin. So what I'll do is I'll unpack both a little bit separately. So one, where AI is mature enough today and rapidly evolving, and two, where folks really still need to be cautious and where that's essential. So I'd say on the maturity side, and some of the other panelists touched on this quite robustly, AI is really quite powerful when it comes to anything to deal with retrieval, summarization, especially document comparison. As the models are evolving, it's becoming increasingly quite useful for classification, certainly translation, and as the others have mentioned as well, knowledge discovery across a large repository of data. So in an impact assessment context, what that means is it could really help teams find relevant precedent, compare project documents against the required frameworks that you receive, and certainly extract themes from technical reports. On the flip side, and Sean, you touched on this briefly, humans still own the accountability and the decision at the end of the day, right? No one will turn to an AI and hold them accountable, certainly not at this point. So where organizations still need to be cautious is anything that requires high stakes judgment without any strong governance, right? So in this context of impact assessment, things like final significance determinations, anything to do certainly with sensitive compliance interpretation, and the relationship with our stakeholders and our commitments to them. So additionally, Catherine, I think you touched on this, be very wary of anything where the model is generating outputs from incomplete, poor quality, certainly unverified data. AI can be very helpful, but it's still quite vulnerable to things like hallucination and hidden bias, and certainly overconfidence in its own answers. So really, as a rule of thumb, I'll kind of leave you with this. Use AI where the task is pattern recognition or where you're looking for acceleration, but keep humans responsible for interpretation and accountability, and certainly sign off. So in a regulated context, the technology is mature enough to assist in the workflow, certainly at this stage, but I wouldn't say it's mature enough to really own the decision at the end of the day.
Thank you, Matthew. So we're always going to need humans around. It looks
Always
like
going to need humans.
So anyone would like to just comment on what has just been said? I'm happy to open up the line for any additional comments from any one of you. If not, I'm just going to go with just another quick roundtable question. All right, so let me go with that one additional roundtable question. I'd like to hear from you if we are to scale AI responsibly and fast for this impact assessment sector, what foundations do we need to have in place? Is it governance? Is it data quality? Is it QA, QC, common terminology? I'm just gonna open up the line. Maybe Matt, you want to start, and then I'll turn to Sean if you have a view.
Sure. Yeah, and this won't be a surprise if you've been following some of the previous answers here, and I'm a little bit colored by my bias coming from a data background, but the foundation always starts with data. So data quality, everything else depends on that. The data has to be usable. It has to be structured enough. It has to be well labeled. It certainly needs to be current. But as Luca mentioned, it also needs to be traceable to structured sources, right? So if the underlying information is inconsistent or it's incomplete, don't look for AI to solve that. It's just going to amplify that. And then the other thing on top of the data, if I were to go through that list of possible foundation elements that you mentioned, André Martin, I'd certainly look to governance next, right? So that needs to be in place before any sort of scale could be looked at, right? That means clear rules for certainly what AI can be used for, but also what it can't be used for, and how outputs are validated, and who owns the decision, and how the system is monitored over time. So in impact assessment, oversight really shouldn't be seen as the red tape. It's really what ensures decisions stand up to scrutiny over time. So kind of putting it together, I'd say from a technology standpoint, always start with data quality and governance. Everything else depends on those two things.
Thank you, Matthew. Sean, any view?
I do, Andre Martin. first of all, I want to reiterate what many on the call said. We have this concept of WSP, machine in the middle, which means that on either side there's human oversight, and we can't get away from that. It's critical. But I just want to build on what Matt just said. Number one, protect the data and have trustworthy data. And that's absolutely fundamental. So I would concur with that. But I'm going to add to it a second thing, which is traceability, which means you can have the best data in the world, but a lot of times the technology, the AI is executing a workflow. And you hear a term a lot in our industry, it's a black box, people say, means I can't figure out how something was done. And it's critical if you're going to have trustworthy AI to have traceability. You need to be able to understand how an answer was arrived at. That's crucial. Just because you get to an answer and just because you have trustworthy data does not mean that the way in which you got to the answer was the correct way. And so this traceability is critical, Andre Martin, and I believe it will actually be a big future discussion area when it comes to AI. If someone says, you know, we're going to design a building using AI, no one's going to trust it unless you can trace back every mathematical equation and how those equations were linked up to the source data and followed best practices, et cetera. The last thing I'm just going to say, and there's many things you could say around trustworthy AI, Andre Martin, is is unbiased and ethical. You know, the large language models themselves that operate across all of that data potentially can be subject to these things. And we see in society at large today, what is at the root of so much of the problems in the world today? It's a lack of trust in society across the board, because there are all sorts of issues around ethics and bias and everything else. It's no different in this context. There needs to be an understanding that what you're doing is unbiased and ethical. So just repeat, you know, the importance of the trust in the data, the traceability of the data, unbiased, ethical, machine in the middle.
Thank you, Sean. We're almost at our Q&A session, but before I turn to Vincent Meslach to help me with moderating the Q&A session, Catherine, Jill, Luca, anything you'd like to add on, you know, what we need to have in place from a foundation perspective? Catherine, I see you have your mic.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm loving what Sean and Matthew are sharing. And I think building off of what they said, it's really grounding our workflows and processes for that traceability and using data in those flows really well. You really need to have a clear description of the steps, the intended outcome, the standard of acceptance before it begins. And we as ESIA practitioners love process. So really having that standardized processes for AI as well would be really, really helpful.
I think the only thing I would add, Andre Martin, is what I said earlier in terms of if and when we use this new tool, those that are our stakeholders or those that are potentially going to be impacted on the receiving end of the impact assessment information that we provide have to understand it. And so there may be a new role, if you will, for the impact assessment practitioners, or maybe it's a new subset of our colleagues that are going to go out into community and stakeholders and work with them to understand it. Because we may understand it as the practitioners, but on the receiving end, they need to understand it as well if they're going to trust it.
So thank you, Jill.
Yeah,
Luca, one last word?
yes, I think Matt really said what I wanted to say at the very beginning, but there is just one thing as a lender's perspective that we would like to see or have, it's standardization. Like we have standards, ENS standards across banks that we're trying to standard, but also if we're gonna have models and the impact assessment community is gonna have different ways to use AI and models, having a standardized way is, as it was done before AI to do impact assessment, but through the use of AI, that's gonna help us compare projects across sectors, across institutions, across companies, and having going to a similar level of standardization and benchmarking across various frameworks, it will be very important for the lender perspective too.
Thank you very much, Luca. So we're 49 minutes past the top of the hour. I want to make sure we keep some time for questions from the audience. So I'm going to turn to Vincent Melage, who is going to help me with moderating that Q&A session. Vincent?
Thanks, André Martin. Thank you all to the panelists for the discussion so far. To make sure we can get through as many as possible, I'll direct each question to one panelist to start and to the panelists. If you can keep your answer to around 60 seconds where possible, that would be great. So first question, Jill, you talked about a possible incompatibility between regulatory frameworks and certain AI innovations. So could you talk more about what that would look like or what compatibility would look like?
I don't know if it's so much compatibility, Vincent, but rather an actual shift in mindset of what's in the toolbox. So in Canada, since that's where I'm based, we've had a similar regulatory framework for impact assessment that's evolved over the last 30 to 35 years. It hasn't significantly changed. It's just sort of been tweaked here and there, and it's been modified over time. I think enabling AI as a new tool would significantly shift how impact assessments are done, at least at the front end when it comes to the data. And so I think what I was referring to was we need a new perspective, a new set of thinking, or at least an openness to something completely new to the process and the approach that we've used for the last 30 to 40 years here in this country anyway.
Great, thank you, Jill. Sean, you mentioned that you think AI does or can break down silos. How would you see this happening?
That's a great question. I'm going to try and take that question in a couple of different ways. So this morning went out and got a haircut for this particular webinar. You sit down in the barber shop and you strike up a conversation. Usually the first topic is the weather. And why do you talk about the weather? It's because you both have the weather in common. And it provides a language that you can start to speak to each other about. So you just take two disciplines in environmental impact, hydrology and climate as an example. Well, hydrology is all about water and runoff and flooding and everything else that directly links to climate change. And so those two things have that in common. If you expand that concept out much further, what I see AI doing is it's basically creating a language. The technology is a language that unifies and finds commonalities across massive amounts of information. And that language starts to suddenly break down barriers, just as myself and the person who cut my hair this morning, we found commonality in the weather. And that is really what it comes down to. Imagine that if you're in an office and everybody in that office speaks a different language, nobody's collaborating, nobody has anything in common. But what does AI do today? It can translate across different languages. It can read across multiple documents, multiple disciplines, find some, I think, Matt, maybe you touched on it earlier, themes across all of that information and start to unify all those themes together. And so that's how it does it.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate that. Next question is to Matt, and I'm really looking forward to the answer for that one. How can teams prevent or detect AI hallucinations when working with large volumes of environmental data?
Yeah, great question. And I think it always starts, and I'll go back to a lot of the things that we mentioned here. It really starts with the pre-work that is done before we look to really scale up this solution. We spoke about the data, and I won't belabor that, but a lot of the work that we do is, before we just unleash an AI onto a new process or a workflow and release it to the masses, is we really make sure to direct AI what our intended output is, and really be prescriptive as to where we want it to go and what we want it to do. And having done all that pre-work and really making sure that that we kind of put a box around what we expect prevents the bias that we spoke about, but also prevents the hallucination. So a lot of the missteps that we see with organizations looking to implement AI, certainly looking to transform an entire workflow, is they don't do enough of that pre-work. So data aside, but also really being prescriptive as to what we want to and what we expect out of AI.
Thank you, Matt.
And if I may add, maybe
Yeah.
just one additional comment when I sound that hallucination question. I think it also shows how important deep domain expertise is in that whole conversation, because I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but environmental impact assessment is multidisciplinary in nature. We deal with a lot of data. We said that, but also all of that gets analyzed and put together into a consistent package. All that being done by deep domain experts, and I think the role of these experts is just going to be even more important in the context of some of the content being released or produced with the help of AI-enabled tools. But we need these deep domain experts to actually QA/QC the content, vet the results of the analysis, rerun some additional calculations, etc., just to check that everything is not hallucinated out of a machine, right?
Thank you, André Martin. To continue on that hallucination point of view, question for Catherine. How might AI affect public or stakeholder trust in impact assessment, especially given concern about that hallucination and misinterpretation?
Great question. I think there is a lot of hesitancy from the public and even just general folks about AI when you don't understand how it does things and how that result comes to be. So being able to, a few people have mentioned this before, but I love the idea from Jill about even sharing the platforms that people are maybe better understanding, like how it's making decisions or how it's helping to facilitate decision making and how it works. But getting people involved in understanding how it's working and what we're using it for, what we're not using it for, will only help get that buy-in. And I think André Martin mentioned this before, but we make brick documents that are gigantic, really. And I think AI will really help our stakeholder and regulator friends to navigate our large documents even better and get answers to their questions even better if we can provide them those opportunities.
Thank you, Catherine. André Martin, over to you.
Well, thanks very much, everyone. Thanks to my fellow colleagues on the panel today. It was a great discussion, very insightful. I've taken a lot of notes as you were talking. A few of my takeaways are as follow. It's not going to replace expert judgment. We're always going to need humans. It will augment our ability or capacity to analyze data and produce evidence for stakeholders in general. I took note, Sean, of what you said, that we will have the ability to tap on virtual agentic workforce, a new workforce, a new virtual workforce we'll be able to tap on. And I want to touch on the foundation. I think it was pretty clear from most of you that data governance and potentially also standardized way of going after impact assessment will certainly be good foundations to get going and keep going with using AI in that impact assessment world. So a lot to be excited about, to be honest with you. And when I look back at all these decades of work that we have done in that space, there's piles and piles of data that are sitting in servers that have not been leveraged yet. So I'm excited for what the short-term and long-term future is because all that data will now be put to work. I think in the future will provide us the ability to provide better quality impact assessments, and also back to the very first point someone mentioned, the ability for AI to summarize things is pretty good, and I think it's going to help digesting a lot of the information that we do produce as experts. So those are my key takeaways. We're now at the top of the hour. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn back to Keisha for closing out the session.
Yes, thank you so much, Andre Martin, all the presenters. That was such a great panel. And judging by all the questions that we got, I was reading through some of them on the back end. There is a lot of interest in this topic, which kind of brings me to my last point. First off, just thank you all for joining us. We know your time is very valuable, and we really are really grateful that you chose to spend it with us today. But as you leave here, there will be a survey, and we would love if you would take some time to fill it out, not only to hear about how we did on today's webinar and get your feedback, but also for suggestions on some future topics. Again, based on the number of questions, if there'd be interest in a follow-up, perhaps we could try to organize something like that. Again, this was a very highly attended webinar, and it seems like there was a lot that we just didn't have time to go over, and maybe in the future we could try to do that. But again, thank you, presenters and panelists. This was such a great presentation. Again, very interesting topic and a lot to be discussed. So thank you, and we hope to see you next time. So until then, have a great day.